Hi, it's Tom Spring with SC Media here at Black Hat USA 2024, and I'm joined by Ofek and Yakir.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're with Aqua Security, and they gave a presentation today at Black Hat called Container Monopoly, Bucket Monopoly. Bucket Monopoly. But first, before we get into the research, I definitely want you guys to introduce yourselves. Go ahead.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, my name is Yakir Kadkoda. I lead the security research at Aqua Security, and I mainly focus on cloud vulnerabilities, open source vulnerabilities, and more.
And my name is Ofek Itach. I'm under Yakir. I'm also a security researcher at Aqua Security.
Okay. So Bucket Monopoly so first off, I just got to ask: is that a play on like Monopoly the game?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was,
yes.
But you don't know these things. Really interesting research. It's a vulnerability that you guys found within the AWS infrastructure. Can you break it down for me in very simple terms in terms of what you guys found and how dangerous or how critical of a vulnerability was this that you found in terms of the importance of identifying it and now Amazon Web Services mitigating and patching the bug.
Yes.
So tell us about the bug.
Okay, so basically on AWS we have services, and in the past we noticed that when the user uses these services, sometimes AWS creates behind the scenes an S3 bucket for the user, although the user did not explicitly ask AWS to do so. This is how most of the services behave behind the scenes, but sometimes these buckets have predictable names. So it's possible for attacker to find this predictable name and claim this bucket before the victim. And in this way, whenever the user will use the previously vulnerable services on a new region for the first time, the vulnerable service will write their data into the attacker claimed bucket.
Okay. So the question I have is, so if I am a company based in the United States and I spin up some storage within an AWS service, and these programs that run in the background automatically create different instances of themselves across a geographic area where a hacker can, help me if I'm getting it right or wrong, where a hacker can anticipate what the name of my company is and what my username might be, and then create those buckets before I create them, and therefore you take it from there. Help me better understand where I'm going with this.
It actually happens automatically, like AWS creating the bucket for you. When you first use the service, like in our case CloudFormation, which is a service in AWS, there are some things that happen behind the scenes, as Yakir said. For example, that bucket is created. So if you are using AWS in a specific region, it will generate you the bucket in a specific region. But most of the time, a lot of users use AWS in different regions because they want better latency. Like if you have customers in Singapore, you want to open your bucket in Singapore.
But the one thing I think is really interesting is that in your research you pointed out that there can be no two buckets named the same. So break that down for me, because I think that's actually a really key part of your research.
So AWS actually creates the bucket with a prefix and suffix. The prefix is for the service, and the suffix is the region that you are using. So the bucket won't be the same name as the for the service, because you want multiple buckets for a specific service on different regions. So AWS adds a suffix to the bucket name, and that suffix is what we can predict. The suffix and the account ID.
So what is it that the adversary can do? So the adversary can predict that my company, Acme manufacturer, is going to create an AWS bucket, but what can they do before I create that bucket myself to leave me open to attack, and what kind of an attack am I leaving myself open to?
Okay, I will explain. So it depends. It depends on the service because each one of them have different permissions. And some of the services only some of the vulnerable predictable bucket name that we found using the account ID. So if attackers somehow know your public account ID, which do not consider as secret, attacker can claim this bucket, and then when the service will drop their file to the attacker claim bucket, the attacker can modify this file and maybe achieve remote code execution or even injecting an admin role to your account.
And how many services did you find that were vulnerable to this type of exploitation?
6.
6. And is there any indication that those vulnerabilities have been exploited in the wild?
We don't know. AWS indicates that they will inform customers directly if they found them they infected by this attack vector.
Okay. And give me a little bit of the timeline in terms of the discovery, the disclosure, and the patching and the remediation. And again, it's my understanding that this is something that AWS was solely responsible for patching. I mean, there's not much you can do as a customer to address this.
So we found this vulnerability around February,
Yeah.
and then AWS immediately responds and fixed some of the services. The last service was fixed on the end of June, and currently there are no more vulnerable services that we reported for this attack vector.
Okay. And then the idea is that like how would the adversary execute malicious code within a bucket in this scenario that you guys have identified?
Do you want to?
So we can actually automate monitor the files that drop to the bucket. In a matter of milliseconds, we can change the file. And what is happening?
Adversary can change.
Yeah, the adversary can change the file. And what is happening behind the scenes, the time that it takes the victim to press the buttons in AWS is slower than the time we change the file. Like the adversary can change the file.
What could you change the file to? What would be like a worst case?
We can inject malicious code, we can inject resources, for example, a role, which is like an identity that has strong privileges.
Okay, so they could create persistent access to that.
Yeah, persistent access, and they access it in the future.
So these vulnerabilities were unique to Amazon Web Services.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now, if you're an Amazon Web Service customer, you should feel comfortable that these vulnerabilities have been fixed. But then again, I'm just wondering, like, is this the type of cloud vulnerability that may cross over to another cloud platform? And what can we say? What are the lessons learned? And what is the takeaway? And how should, what is the best, practices for a company that's worried about these types of attacks and these types of vulnerabilities in the cloud?
Okay, so first of all, organization must create more tight policy. For example, in our blog, we suggest to add something that's called a condition in a policy. And in this case, even if you will be vulnerable for this attack vector because some open source or other vulnerable service that we do not find, the role that will try to access the attacker or a malicious S3 bucket will get an error because with condition you can prevent your role from accessing resources that you do not trust or you are not their owner.
Okay. So I thank you guys so much. Now you're going to give a similar talk, more technical talk at DEF CON later in the week. So looking forward to that, and I just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time and talking with SC Media here at Black Hat, and I wish you guys a great rest of your show.
Thank you. Thank you for
having
having
us.
us.
Thank you.